It is Super Bowl week. Everybody wants to talk about the Super Bowl, but
We're on Radio Row, Cody.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
there.
we are. We're You can tell we are live. If you are watching on YouTube or Match Quarters, we are live at Radio Row. No, we're both probably too cheap to go to an actual Super Bowl to try and be on Radio Row. Though I would love to go and walk around and talk to people. I think I would enjoy going around and talking to people.
On the bucket list for sure.
Yeah, I think eventually we'll be there. Maybe we can get this. So everybody on here, the whole deal is follow us, like us, do all this stuff that everybody tells you to do, but then also go tell your friends so that maybe one day me and Felix can talk to you live from Radio Row. We'll see. We'll see. But everybody's focused on the Super Bowl. We're going to have the Super Bowl breakdown. We're going to go through it. This is not going to be what you're going to find on regular media. I've got it down. I went through everything. If you're listening to this Monday, I released the Chalk's Last. It's a season finale. It is an absolute beast to go through. I did literally any angle on defense that you can think of. I covered it. So let's make sure that we're checking that out. We're going to have that a little later. I think one of the more interesting things right now is this coaching carousel. It is so big. There's 10 of them. I think, what did it say? It tied a record for most head coaches fired. So if you think about it, there's only 32 teams. We're pretty much at a third of the league. Is going to be brand new. Now, there are retreads. There always are. In typical NFL fashion, we've got a lot of Shanahans and LaFleurs and Kubiaks, and McVay's son is not yet eligible to be a head coach yet.
They can't wait for him to turn 30.
Somebody
they can't wait.
But we didn't get a Shula. I thought that was one of the interesting things. We didn't get a Shula, so we're headed that way. But let's talk first about, I think, one of the more interesting hires. It's interesting, one, who they hired, but also interesting because who they might lose. They are going to have to do some damage control in an organization that is clearly not good at doing damage control. That is Todd Monken to the Browns.
It is very wild, and I always find it wild, like the Cliff Kingsbury situation from a handful of years ago where he got fired at Texas Tech, and then all of a sudden he's the head coach of the Cardinals.
People forget that. He was fired at Tech.
He accepted the offensive coordinator job at USC. That's how moved on he was. And then the Cardinals are like, come on down. And so it's just such a weird situation to hire a guy that got fired in his previous position. And I mean, at least it was a part of the staff that got fired, and he was moved on and going to be the OC of, guess what? The New York Giants. And I think if you had one side of the ball that was historically good, and you got a guy in Jim Schwartz, you're going to hire somebody that's not really inspiring or whatever you want to, however you want to put it, however you feel about Todd Monken. Now you might help out Shedeur with all the other things, but at the same time, you're losing Jim Schwartz, your defensive coordinator, who had a relationship with Miles Garrett. But and your defense was phenomenal this year, and you're going to be changing that up just by losing the head of your defense now. What does that look like? And also, you're the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, so my whole deal with Schwartz is he basically gets the Spagnuolo look. Is like, hey, you remember how bad you were as a head coach? But here's the thing. He won 10 games in 2011 and lost in a wild card game. So he actually got the Lions to an actual playoff. But here's my thing with guys like this is he's 59, he's pushing 60. He hasn't been a head coach since 2013. And I think a lot, you know what I mean? I think a lot of coaches are just kind of like, or a lot of organizations are like, there's a young hot guy, but they didn't hire a young hot guy. They hired Monken, who, again, I think did a good job. I don't think everybody was excited about him all the time with Baltimore. Obviously, if he was the one that Lamar wanted to be the head coach, I think they probably would have given him a long look, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's just a weird look. It's the Browns. I mean, that's why we're going to open up with them so that we can get it over with and we can move on. Do I think it's a good hire? He's got a lot of collegiate experience, so I don't – maybe an outside the box. This is definitely a knee-jerk reaction to we have not had, and it's not Stefanski's fault. a lot of times. I mean, now you talk to Cleveland Browns fans, and I found this really interesting because we've kind of released some things like into social media that have talked about Stefanski. I think a lot of Browns fans were pretty much ready to move on. I don't think they really liked his version of the Shanahan style offense. I think if you look at the Falcons are not necessarily excited that he's there. Look,
I don't think it matters. Shut up, Browns fans. Just be happy with something, dude. Like, he took you to the playoffs twice. Shut up.
Right, and was coach of the year because that's how bad your roster was on the offensive side of the ball. So, yeah, I think, to me, though, I will say this. I think that if you could have – I think you have a conversation with Schwartz and, like, who are you going to bring in offensively? I don't know if there's a lot of these hot shot – like, could you have got a Nate Shieldhouse? Could you have got – somebody like, because to me that would have been, or like, could you have got a Davis Webb from the Broncos to come be your offensive coordinator? Some of these hot name guys that are not the coordinator, but like, could you get them to come and be your offensive coordinator? And I think that this was, look, we have to fix offense. We're going to call your bluff, because I will be honest with you. Where is Schwartz going to go? Is he just going to say, I'm going to retire for a year? Is he going to go to the Raiders with Kubiak? We'll talk about him in a second. So it's like that's really your only option at this point, is to go to the Raiders or maybe the Cardinals. And is that really where you want to go when you have that defensive roster built for you?
Yeah, there was a world where like Vic Fangio retires and Jim Schwartz goes back to Philadelphia, but all that stuff. Well, that's more speculation than we have time for. All right, the closest thing that you were talking to, that I think there was that you were talking about, was to a hotshot coordinator, was like a Mike LaFleur and a Klint Kubiak. And I mean, obviously, we talked about their names being familiar, at least, and that helps in today's NFL for one reason or another. And we've talked about those reasons before. But let's talk about Mike LaFleur going to the Arizona Cardinals. We talk about it all the time. In a division, 4 teams, they kind of just mirror each other. And the Cardinals were just like, all right, who's McVay's coordinator this year? Come on down. Yep, you're the guy. You're the head coach. And so, and it is just kind of weird. And I thought, like, we talked about it a little bit with I thought they could have hired the other McVay coordinator with Shula, where it's like, if you're going to be doing the Spider-Man meme, do it with the Seahawks, because they have
do the defensive side of the ball. Yes,
they have the defensive version of McVay and Shanahan, and hopefully just trying to move in that direction. And then you can figure out your offensive side of the ball. Hire, I mean, I don't know if Cliff Kingsbury wants to come back as your offensive coordinator.
He's not going to do a Vance situation.
I don't know. No, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, I've heard living in Phoenix is pretty nice, so I don't know. Maybe he does. I don't know. It's not as good as that Malibu shot, but that he, that house that he had in Malibu. But yeah, that'll be really interesting.
But all right, Mike LaFleur. Let's just get this a little bit more confusing. Mike LaFleur, Matt's little brother, headed to the Arizona Cardinals. Be fun if Malik Willis goes there, and his career could be forever tied to one family.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting one. Again, I don't know. I'm really interested as we get closer, obviously post-combine, or as we get closer to the combine, because that's when a lot of these deals, I don't think a lot of people probably know this, but like at the combine, like there's a lot of moving and shaking, and a lot of these contracts have to get done by the March 1st deadline. Like, are you going to, so this March 1st designation or a June 1 designation, if you're into the cap, it makes my brain hurt, but they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with their quarterback situation. I do think having Malik Willis as a guy that you can bring in, I think that he'll probably gives you a higher ceiling than Jacoby Brissett if you want to bring somebody in as a different feel. So I can definitely see that. I think that's a really good idea. But the Cardinals now, I wrote in our show notes, is basically becoming the Island of Misfit Toys QB unit. Like, what are we going to do at that position? I do think, there's a trend in the NFL of like, well, we went with an offensive head coach, now we go defense. We went with a defensive head coach, now we go offense. And I think that's kind of why you didn't see maybe a guy like Shula. I don't even think they asked to interview him. I could be wrong on that. But, again, it's what we're getting to. And I just want to make people understand and be aware of this, is that when something is not novel anymore, it becomes the standard. that's when everything gets vanilla. And what we're seeing right now in the NFL is essentially that everything is turning into the Shanahan McVay system. And then what are the offshoots of this? Obviously, McVay's shown that he can change.
Mm-hmm.
Shanahan's kind of stayed the same. I think like Klint Kubiak showed a ton of growth. We've talked about this before. The two games where he scored 40 points and they just kind of disappeared with New Orleans. I thought he's done a really good job to finish the season here. But yeah, we're now to the point where the entire West looks like the Shanahan McVay system out. And who's going to hire? Like, who's McDonald going to hire? Mm-hmm. Is he going to go get Shieldhouse and say, "Hey, I'll let you call"? I mean, we got to find a guy. Who's the other Kubiak? I know his brother's out there too. Like, where's he?
Clay,
Clay. Yeah. So it's like is he next in line? So it's like, guys, the Kubiaks, the Shanahans, and then you have McVay and LaFleur. It's like they're all type. Bobby Slovic just got an offensive coordinator job for the Dolphins. It's like, dude, I don't know. Have some creativity.
Hey, Sean, I know I just beat you in the NFC Championship, but your son, how does he feel about the run game? We like running the ball up here in Seattle.
Well, I mean, we're going to have Mike McDaniels. We're going to have Mike McDaniels in the AFC West. So for us as a Broncos and a Chiefs fan, we're going to have to deal with that. We're going to have now Kubiak, who's going to be probably – and so we'll segue into that. But it came out this week that Kubiak, who's the offensive coordinator for Seattle, he's going to be the head coach, allegedly –
I think on paper it works really, really well because you have like the Kubiak run scheme, which is essentially like the Shanahan run scheme.
Yeah.
Because Mike and Gary ran it back in the day with your Broncos, your stupid Broncos.
The backup quarterback for John Elway too. Don't forget that.
Whatever. That's so stupid. But on paper, I think it works really well because you have this outside zone run scheme. You have Ashton Jeanty, who had some pops here and there. Fernando Mendoza with the number 1 overall pick. Fix your offensive line because it's the Raiders and you haven't had a good offensive line or even passable since Gene Upshaw. But like on defense, there's obviously issues that you need to fix over there. But I want to talk about this, particularly when it comes to Klint Kubiak, because whatever, that job's going to be there. It's the Raiders. How much does this affect the Super Bowl individually? Because the Seahawks are an incredibly young team, and we'll talk about this game in depth in a second. I just want to talk about this because we see coaches like in college, if you accept a coaching job and like because the calendar is so weird, they're just like, get out. You got to go and just you're doing that. And the NFL, all right, we're in the playoffs and this is just one more game and one more week. I understand that, but does that kind of affect the psyche of a team, and especially such a young team like this where it's just like, well, damn, now he's gone. He was only here for a year. Now we think we can really keep this going. Well, one guy's gone. But like, I'm just saying is this could be one thing that just affects the Super Bowl in one minor way, that it's just one game, but it's the game.
I think the Super Bowl is a little different because of this off week. I mean, essentially, you don't have anything. Like we didn't have anything last week. And so you have the opportunity to go and say, hey, I'm going to take 3 hours. I'm going to go interview, or, hey, I'm taking the day off. I'm flying into, hey, I'm going to go to Las Vegas and I'm going to have an in-person interview with them. Mm-hmm. I think that affects them. There's going to be arguments, especially around LA, of like, hey, Shula was taking all these deals, but then he's also trying to call a game against the Seattle Seahawks. Like, how did that look? I think when it's in the playoffs, and then you don't play well in the back end and you look really you look like you weren't necessarily prepared. I think that then there's questions with it. But here's the deal. It's the business. And I think if you can't handle as a coach doing an interview and prepping for that, and then not being able to handle calling a game as well, I think that shows more to you about, can you handle all, because think about it, when you become the head coach, you're the head coach of the entire program. So I do think it does affect, it came out this weekend, like, oh, hey, it's Super Bowl week. We're going to leak it. Like, hey, by the way, we can't make it official until after the game, but this is going to be our head coach. Now, is he going to get some questions about it and things like that? He can always just plead the fifth and move on. I don't think it becomes a distraction at all. So I think If it's in the playoffs, yes. If it's now at the Super Bowl, like he's had that off week to really go and interview, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, and I don't really think it affects it. But I will finish with this, and then we can move on to Minter and the Ravens. But this is one of those weird oddities of the NFL where you don't necessarily want to interview for this job because you're in the playoffs, but if you don't interview for the job, you're not going to get it, and there's only 32 of them. So it's like that whole
almost that many available this year. So
right, like you don't know how many. There might only be 3 next year. We don't know. So it's like you think of it in that cyclical term. It's like, okay, you really want to try and take your shot, but at the same time, like, you really don't have a choice. You need to go interview for those. So
yeah, I think the magic number every year is about 7 openings every year, but that's a lot. I can't remember. I read an article earlier this week. There was like 35 head coach hires over the last 5 years. So it's just ridiculous how crazy they turn those around. All right. So we've talked about a couple of defensive coordinators that for bad teams, but we're getting interviews for head coaching jobs, and we're just at least getting looks. Well, there'll be defensive coordinators going into next year because Jesse Minter is bringing along Anthony Weaver from the Miami Dolphins as his defensive coordinator. That just got announced as we got things started here. Denard Wilson will be going to the New York Giants as John Harbaugh's defensive coordinator. So 2 ex-Ravens guys going with the ex-Ravens head coach and the Ravens with Jesse Minter, who's coming back to the Ravens. And so I think at least for the Ravens, it is kind of an interesting thing where it's like, yes, of course, we're kind of done with the Harbaugh situation, but we're kind of keeping everything the same and like going to keep the same defensive ladder of like in a couple of years, Anthony Weaver might be a head coach. And then the linebackers coach who's 32 years old, he's the defensive coordinator now because we have this same churning rotation of interns that become assistants and assistants that become whatever. And so it is really interesting how that might work out. And we can talk about Declan Doyle as their offensive coordinator here in a second, how that works out with Lamar Jackson. But how do you feel about Jesse Minter going to the Baltimore Ravens, but a lot of the structural things, at least some of the things around him staying the same?
Yeah, nothing's changing. I mean, organizationally, nothing's changing. I think language around the players is not going to change defensively. I think there'll be a little bit of change just from the word go. There will be some things that he's evolved to with his time at Michigan and then back in LA with the Chargers. Anthony Weaver, I think, is more than capable defensive coordinator. I think that's why he was up for some head coaching jobs. Am I surprised that they hired him? No. This is a Ravens organization that wants to keep everything in-house as much as they possibly can. You see this. I think there are going to be some opportunities for younger guys within this organization to move up. I know Daniel Stern, who was their kind of their quarterback assistant, kind of ran the back end for Harbaugh, is headed with Monken to the Browns as kind of the assistant to the head coach, which is a massive role. That seems like that's not a very glorious role. I would love to have that role. What do you mean? I could get to just sit in all these meeting rooms and then like I'm the guy that can do special projects for everybody, and you're working around and you can just be an absolute massive nerd, but then you also can coach on a regular basis, whichever position they decide. So that seems like, oh, you're just like a glorified, gopher.
Hey, Sean McVay, don't call Cody. I like doing the podcast. It's a good time. Chill out. Not Peyton, any of you guys.
That job is an actual really important job. And I think that it gives a lot of leeway for guys but that proves that point of like all these guys kind of come up through this. Weaver's an interesting one. I will say this about Weaver and really just kind of in general about this. I know that it's been touched on before. There's just not a lot of black head coaches. And when you fire a guy like Tomlin and then you have guys that are kind of sniffing around, I do think when you look at this class in particular, there just wasn't any. And two, I think the other thing is on the offensive side, there's just a lack of black offensive coordinators.
There's no pipeline for it, and it is such a strange thing where like I've thought it was going to get better over the next couple of years, whereas like you've seen more black quarterbacks, at least at the college level, where it's just there's just more teams at least, and so things are just going to kind of get better that way, and it just hasn't for one reason or another. But I also think that, like, just in the general, for like, there were 10 head coaching jobs, none of them were like Mike McCarthy got a gig. Joe Brady got promoted from within. Like, there's not a ton of really like inspiring candidates, and none of for as many great jobs as there were too, like with the Steelers, the Bills, the Ravens. And it was just like, yeah, Jesse Minter would have been a better hire a year ago. It felt like almost. And like, it was just like some of these hires in general, regardless of what color the guy was, whatever. Well, not there.
Yeah, and I think that there is a young group coming up. I think that you're going to see more and more down the line. So I don't necessarily think this is like the death knell, or like, hey, we need to rattle some cages. Look, it's the NFL. It's always been like this. It's a billionaires. Typically these guys hire.
We got one of the head coach's little brothers and another guy's son. Like that's how, like, it's the NFL. It's how it happens.
Yes, and it's almost like,
Jake Gruden had a job for like a half decade. And Todd Haley got a gig because he was somebody's kid. So that's how it happens.
Exactly. And like, some of these are like obvious hires too, of like, Minter was obviously going to be the head coach with the Ravens. Like, let's be honest. That's who they felt like they missed out on. Mike Macdonald. Let's get Mike Macdonald 2.0. Let's bring him in. So yeah, I think it's interesting. You mentioned the Giants hired Denard Wilson, who I think, again, why we've mentioned this multiple times on the show. Why Anthony Weaver and Denard Wilson were ever allowed. One of them, just pick. I don't care. Pick one of them. Obviously, you picked Denard Wilson to be your DC in New York.
Denard or Anthony, neither.
Why couldn't you have picked him? I don't know. So the big thing here, though, is Cliff Kingsbury, OC, and then Callahan has been rumored. I don't know how fired up people will be for that.
Bring Bill with him. I think that
yes,
might be
if you bring the dad. That's a little bit of a different story because of the O-line. But I just think that whole thing was a dumpster fire to begin with the Titans. It just never worked out. Denard Wilson obviously is going to be a solid guy. I think he'll be good. Kingsbury as the OC would be very interesting with a guy like Jaxson Dart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Giants are interesting. A lot of people are high on them very early into the offseason. That hasn't started yet. But I'm just kind of interested to see how things kind of fit. But like, I don't know. I like John Harbaugh. I'm not as high on the hire as everybody else is. But
it's these big. If you think about it, it's these big organizations that are in these big cities that just don't want to deal with the media. And so what do you do?
Giants, they needed to hire somebody like that should be stable. They hired Brian Dable, who at least was crazy, and he was there for 4 years. Joe Judge and Pat Shermer, like just one-off guys over and over. I know that John Harbaugh is going to be there for at least 3 seasons, and they're going to win at least 7-ish games around there. And like, instead of just being the god-awful New York Football Giants over the last 8 years or whatever it's been.
Yeah, and I think, like, so to wrap up the head coaching thing, I do think that you saw it, you mentioned it.
Real quick, I do want your opinion on Joe Brady to the Bills.
Well, that's what I was getting ready. Look, I'm okay with, obviously this was kind of what I was going to say, is just, you have these older established coaches, or they're going with a name. And I think, like, until ownership starts actually going, like, Seattle hiring Mike Macdonald was kind of a little bit of a, oh, okay, that's interesting. I mean, even too, like with McVay hiring him as young as he did, like, you're going to have to really go out there, and you're going to have to go get, you're going to have to do your homework. And I just don't know if some of these guys do. But to your point with Brady, and that's kind of where I was going with this, is I like what he's doing defensively, and he's hiring the staff. I like him hiring the staff that he's hiring. This obviously was not going to be signed off with if Josh Allen didn't want him to stay. So there's been some things where, was he really able to run the full offense that he wanted to? A lot of McDermott guys, but I hire an OC. Hey, teach these guys your offense type deal. Jim Leonhard is going to be the defensive coordinator. I think the Packers really, really wanted him. I think the Packers fans really, really wanted him. He's a former Bill. He played with Rex Ryan. They hired Jay Valai as the DB coach. I know, I'm still interested. to see who they're going to hire as the D-line coach. That'll give me a little bit more signal. We have Raheem Morris to the 49ers. I think that's easy button for Shanahan. It gives him another head coach on the sideline.
He's going to be waiting for Robert Saleh to get fired again.
Yeah, then bring him back. Hopefully, and then it'll just be Saleh. Saleh goes to the DC. Raheem Morris gets another head coaching job, and then it'll flip back.
Oh, that's good.
You know how it is, and it'll just be. There's a school here in Dallas that Alito, and like the head coach retired and the AD retired, and then they just flipped. Like the AD became the head coach, and the head coach became the AD, and then they did it for like 4 years, and then they flipped back. And it's like that's what they're just going to keep doing that. This to me is like that's like the 49ers. And then I love what Christian Parker's doing. So going back to talking about like the Steelers, this is why I think it's a bigger indictment on the Steelers with why hiring McCarthy. People forget outside of DFW, his first year when he hired all his dudes, he was abysmally bad. So the Jones literally took away all of his hiring power, and they've been hired. Eberflus was a Jones hire. We're seeing now like Schottenheimer is able to hire his guys. Christian Parker is doing a hell of a job hiring guys. He's got Ainsley, who was a passing game coordinator for the Packers, who has been around the NFL, was around at college. I think he was a Tennessee Volunteer defense coordinator. He's been with the Chargers, been with the Packers. Ryan Smith, the corners coach with the Cardinals. The corners played actually relatively well, even though it was a revolving door. Christian Parker, who I'm a big fan of from the Eagles. And then I'm interested to see who the D-line coach is. I'm just waiting for that, but I'm excited to see this.
I do enjoy the needling within the division because the Cowboys requested to interview some offensive candidate for their offensive coordinator position, and they were like, "No, you got our defensive backs coach. Shut up! Like, no, you stay over there. You can't take our whole staff." Jesus Christ. Like, I thought that was very, very good.
Well, it probably is a little bit of rats trying to leave the ship. I'll be interested to see with the Eagles. I think he's got one more year to clean it up and figure it out. And then it's probably I'll
move across the state. Fine.
Yes.
Come on through. All right. Let's talk the big game, the Super Bowl. We got New England versus the Seahawks, and I've been trying to. It feels like every Super Bowl this kind of comes up, where it's like, and over the last couple of years, we've seen some like good ones aside from last year, and like I guess like the two Chiefs losses over the last couple of years haven't been very good, but we also could see a blowout here because the Seattle Seahawks just have that type of team where it's like, oh yeah, JSN had 150 yards in the first quarter and a half, and the defense was like, yeah, we don't feel like letting you score any points. So, but also the Patriots, I feel like we're getting two of probably the best matchup when it comes to like week by week. No, the Seahawks were probably the best team in the NFC, and I know that the Broncos were very good, but the Patriots were also in the running for the number one seed up until like the last 3 weeks of the season. So we have two of the best teams in football and probably the two best teams in football. And now we're seeing, like, what do you think is exactly going to happen? What's more likely in the game script, 24-20, or is it just like, damn, 43-8? I don't want to remind you that one. The Seahawks winning.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this: like, it would have been like the Patriots didn't get the first round by because of like a rounding error, right? Like it was a scheduling error. It was one of those weird things. It was like fifth docket down, right? To be able to get the first round by anyway. I agree. I think if I tell you right now, I think Seattle blows it out. I think a majority of people are like, okay, I can see that. If I say, hey, I think the Patriots ugly the game up, I think they try and keep it close. I think they try and out-efficient the most efficient team. I think there's less people that are sitting there like, I can kind of see that. I think, too, it's just one of those where I think a lot of people watch that game in Denver and we're like, yeah, Bo Nix plays. Bo Nix, they probably win. And so there's no way that I think that the Seahawks can win. But I go back and I say this because it's like, look, DVOA, which is very much opponent adjusted, hates the Patriots. EPA, which is just raw down by down, loves the Patriots. They like them. They're like 11th overall on defense. And I think people just look at that and they see the dysfunction with the Jets. They see the dysfunction with the Dolphins. The Bills really weren't the Bills of what they really felt like. And they kind of ran through that schedule. So I think people think that they're not a believer, but I'm going to tell you right now, this game's going to be close. I do not think it's going to be a Seahawks blowout.
I think but to your last point is like they beat the hell out of Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Then they also beat the hell out of, CJ Stroud.
Yes, I agree. I see your point. But you got to win the games you play. I think Vrabel is like he's the perfect fit of like, we're going to just drag you to the deep end of the pool and we're going to see how long you can swim. And like, we're going to just make this thing ugly and it's not going to be great, but there is signal. And that's really what we're going to talk about here. I do think the head coaching, look, everybody loves Mike McDaniel. I think Vrabel, he's the next Belichick.
And that's why I think it's really hard to, and it's a 4.5 point spread. That's a lot of points. Regardless of how you feel this game is going to go, unless you think that the Seahawks are just going to get out to a massive lead and just never look back like they did against the 49ers in the divisional round. But which is entirely possible for all the things that we just said. But at the same time, Mike Vrabel, he has been here before as a player. I understand there's all that, but like, there is something to like this logo being here before, and like the Seahawks have been around here and whatever, but like there's a bit of like tradition being around, and like this is the closest thing that the NFL has to like a college football or high school football dynasty, because it all happened where like we all can remember it. Like at least the players who are still young here remember the greatest football player of all time winning 6 of those Super Bowls. You have that legacy to uphold. Maybe I'm kind of just overhyping that, but when your head coach is a guy who was there for some of it, it matters that much more. And so, like when you're saying they can ugly the game up, it's because of that reason. Mike Vrabel's like, no, we did this 20 years ago. I'm gonna tell you how we did it. Let's do it again.
I agree, and I think Josh McDaniels on the other side is not afraid.
Exactly. He's been around forever and ever.
Not afraid.
He's gone up against big defenses like this before. They played the Legion of Boom. They played the Legion of Boom 15 years ago or whatever it was. They put up like 35 points on it. I can't remember that game beat by beat, but at the same time, they put up a handful of points on there. Josh McDaniels was there for all of it, for like the length of it. So like, what does that look like for when it comes to the experience level of it? And then you have like a Rick Woolen mistake like you had in the Rams
Josh, game. We'll get into this. I 100% believe that Josh McDaniels is sitting there and he's like, I have a pathway for victory. And I think you put it in our notes here, the last one before we start really getting into the key factors of this game, is that I think the Patriots have the ultimate cheat code in this, and that's Drake Maye. I don't think people have realized, look, you can opponent adjust all you want. He has been the best deep ball thrower. He scrambles at a pretty efficient rate. He's got the most scrambles, and he can get out of things. And I think we are seeing there's always one guy. I think he's going to be 1A. I think Bo Nix is going to be 1B. But I think he is going to be the superstar from his draft class.
You saw Caleb Williams, right? Like you saw him look like the jump man.
I do. No, now I'm just saying, I just think Caleb Williams. Bo? I know, dude, but you're biased. You're 100%. Everybody listen to this. Just know Felix has blinders on. He has blinders. We've all had that friend. He meets that girl, and he's like, just everything goes black for him. It's like, hey, you remember
she's on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Where's he been? And you're like, oh, I met that girl. And then it's like, he's going to come back in about 6 weeks and be like, you know what? I messed up, guys. Can I hang out? And typical dudes will second back in. But no, I
can fix her.
You can fix Caleb Williams, right? Like, yes. No, I do think I do think the stability of May and the stability of Nix, you have that instability. Do I think that Caleb Williams can end up being a superstar? I think he's already going to be. And especially in there, we've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. That class may end up being a relatively pretty good class if you think about it. Yeah. If you can have 3 guys like that are consistently there.
He's already been to an NFC Championship game, and that seems like he's going to be the floor of it. JJ McCarthy, maybe, but still.
Yeah, McCarthy's going to. McCarthy's
Josh Rosen
going to end up being the dud. but it stinks for him because he never really got his career going just because of the injury. All right, let's get into not arguing about Caleb Williams because we've talked about it. Like, you either love Caleb Williams or you hate him. We mentioned him. We haven't mentioned Dak's legacy, so we got to make sure that we got that in. Now we're official football show. Okay, let's get into the Super Bowl. My biggest thing here, and I think this doesn't really necessarily have an effect on the game, but I do think it's really interesting. We hit on some of these, is that basically New England is early. And so everybody views them, and you put this here, like they're essentially the zombie team of the playoffs. They're meandering around. If you let them bite them, you're dead. They've kind of gotten lucky to be here, right? They played Herbert, and that offense was terrible. That's why they went and got a new offense coordinator. Nobody can really figure out if CJ Stroud's going to be any good. You've mentioned it ad nauseum on this, that they can't figure the offensive line out. They stunt a ton up front. Then they go play Denver without Bo Nick. So and half of the game was in a snowstorm. So I agree with you. They are. Seattle on the other side is like we're going to keep it on the dark side, right? So we'll use the Star Wars analogy. They're basically like the fully farmed Death Star. And do we really think the Patriots, these rebels, which is hilarious because it's the Patriots, most blue blood of all the blue bloods. They've been to what, like 8 Super Bowls now? Like, do we really think that they can go in there? This is an efficiency monster. This is the number 1 overall defense. Defense typically wins championships. So they're structurally sound. They have a good run game. Their offense isn't elite, but it's better than the Patriots. So like how do you feel about this matchup before we really get into the nitty gritty?
The Patriots think they have Luke Skywalker too, like that. It is so like, again, this is coming from a Chiefs guy who's seen Patrick Mahomes go into multiple Super Bowls against the 49ers and Eagles and be like, yeah, but he's that guy. And so like, I know Drake Maye may not be that guy just yet, but like, this is the first playoffs we've seen him in. He hasn't played great yet. And so like, we always talk about like, oh, this guy's due for a bad game. I think Drake Maye might be due for a good game too, and I'm not saying that's even for that means the Seahawks will lose or it'll even be a close game per se. But like, it can come down to like, oh snap, Drake Maye was, damn, like he's Drake Maye,
right?
And then he's a Super Bowl MVP, and he's going to Disney World for a reason.
No, I agree. It's kind of like the hot shot versus the Phoenix, right? Like you have the hot shot young quarterback. We don't really know, like, okay, how good is he? Everything points. I mean, he essentially has had an MVP caliber season. It's just, it's kind of like the Fernando Mendoza Heisman moment, or like I always remember when I was at Baylor and RG threw that ball and hit Terrence Williams in the end zone to beat OU. Everybody's like, Heisman moment. Like, we're waiting for Drake Maye's Heisman moment to where you're like, oh yeah, okay, like he's that guy, right?
And it happens in the Super Bowl. Like
if it does, it would be like, look, we've talked. Look, the NFL script writers, it's like you can't make this stuff. The reality is much better than fiction. And I think with Sam Darnold, that's the other thing. So the question why we're leading off in these talking points really is the quarterbacks, because everybody's waiting for Maye to become that sophomore, right? Like, he can't scramble his way out of this one, or you can't throw deep out of this one. Like, yeah, he's thrown into too many tight windows. Now the Seahawks start picking him off. This game's going to get ugly. I think with Darnold, it's a redemption tour. Don't forget, the Patriots are the famous "I'm seeing ghosts out there" game. So that game when he was with the Jets, this is the Patriots. So this is the final boss for him. This is it.
That's why I think it's so, like, again, if we're talking script writers, like, doesn't it just sound good that Rocky loses at the end of Rocky? Like, he loses them at the end of the first one. Maybe again, like the Seahawks are a team that could come back at some point. But like, I think that's why it's so potentially dangerous. And Sam Darnold, for more reasons than one, is the X factor in this game, because if he sees a singular ghost, there goes the game. That's what it could be, where it's like, a Rashid Shaheed 40-yard punt return may be the game. You seeing a ghost and like just missing a ball and that may turn into an interception or just a really bad incompletion one way or another. We've seen that happen, like giveaway Super Bowls with Jimmy G overthrowing Emmanuel Sanders in 54. And so like there are a few moments where it's like you can't even see like a whisper. You can't even hear the wind, dude, because like it gets active out there. And that's what Mike Vrabel is hoping that happens, because that's how the game gets dirty. It gets mucked up.
Yeah, I agree with you. So that's why I wanted to start off with this, because the quarterbacks is just like we have no idea what either two are these are going to play.
And I think in the same way, like Drake Maye is kind of due for a good game, Sam Darnold could be due for a bad game where he didn't have to do. They had obviously the first week off in the wild card. Didn't have to do much because Rashid Shaheed returned the touchdown against the 49ers. And then he has the best game of his career.
Which I think LA played terrible on defense. They didn't even try to attack him at all. I mean, basically was playing 7-on-7 out there. Yeah, I agree. And speaking of passing, like I don't think people understand the Patriots offense has like the best passing game. And it's because Drake Maye throws the ball deep. And then I don't think people are like Kayshon Boutte and Stephon Diggs at 32 years old. Like that's really Mac Hollins is the deep shot ringer for play action. And then there's just like a couple of young guys that they sprinkle in there that are kind of fast, but they're like, that's who we're really looking at. And then you look across the field and it's like a bunch of aliens playing DB.
Hunter Henry going across the
field? Is that Hunter Henry that we're throwing the ball to? And then you look and you've got Nicky Manwuri, you've got Tarek Woolen, who's 6'4", 210 pounds. Josh Jobe has had a fantastic year this year. Witherspoon was a top 5 pick and can play inside or can play outside. You have Julian Love, who is a Pro Bowl caliber. You have Kobe Bryant, who, again, is just kind of ascended into this role of being a really good, solid starter. And
doesn't that sound like a defense the Patriots would beat, though, in like 2005? Doesn't that sound like something that would happen?
And then, so that's, I think, as we start digging into this layer by layer, I think you're going to see that the Patriots really have a system that I think can beat them. I think that here's the thing about Seattle too, and this is the next point here, is that they lay a really nice trap. They're going to play a ton of cover 2. They're going to play a ton of zone. They have the number 1 blitz DVOA, which just means, look, when they do blitz, and they don't blitz often, they're one of the bottom third. But he is a sniper at calling pressures. He is Spagnuolo-like, to bring it back to the Chiefs. When you're watching a Super Bowl and you're like, oh, that was a perfectly called blitz to attack that condensed set, or they needed a stop and they got it because Spagnuolo knew exactly where to call it. He's been doing that all year. Here's the thing, though. They have the worst open receiver rate. And so open receiver rates are done off of the GPS. Like, so when a guy catches a ball, they have it's like how much yards? I think it's like 2.5 to 3 yards away. That's considered open because there's like nobody by him. Well, they have the worst. Why? They play zone. And they don't play matchup zone. They're playing a lot of vision zone, much like Indiana played against Miami. So if you're like looking for a comp at the college level. So it's a trap, though, because the moment you throw it to him, 1, you're throwing low, and then 2, he's tackled. So there is no explosives. They're going to try and make Drake Maye turn into a check down Charlie. They're going to try and get McDaniels frustrated not throwing the ball, because that is what this is. This is a deep ball throwing team. They put a cap on it. And I think like that to me is going to be one of the things to look at in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really interesting to see that, but like I can't help, like when you're saying all that, is like Drake Maye's going to take off out of the pocket, like he's gone, like, and there's a first down all the way up and down the field.
Well, and that's the other thing is like with having zone, he actually isn't like the best scrambling. He is the one that does it the most. He's getting about 7 yards. The problem is that you have a defense that can run, and then you also have kind of like the Texans, like, okay, you scrambled, but we're gonna get you. I thought against the Broncos, again, a team that produces the most scrambles out of all, he was able to really get that going. So yeah, and that's a thing too. If you're a coach, when you got a guy and you feel like you got him, and then he escapes. I mean, dude, you've watched it. You're with Patrick Mahomes. It's the most frustrating thing you can have, and I think like that's going to be one of the signals. I think off of that, how are they producing that? These two teams, you're going to see more line movement than you've ever seen in any NFL game. The O-line for the Patriots is not very good. That's going to be an issue. The Patriots put Denver's interior in a blender, and they had one of the best ones. So I'm really, that inside defensive line, I am really excited to see that matchup in this game.
The two leaders for Super Bowl MVP are obviously the two quarterbacks, but if this is going to be a really fun game, I think this guy could win it. JSN has been ridiculous all season long, including the NFC Championship game where he was just like, oh yeah, Puka, one-on-one. Let's play one-on-one football somehow, and we're not on the field at the same time. But how big of an impact could a guy like JSN have on the game of games?
I think if they use him, I think they're going to use him in the slot more than anything else. And I think when they do line him outside, look for Kupp to have a bunch of shots on the inside, just because Marcus Jones is really feast or famine. He's given up 7 touchdowns. He's given up a bunch of yak this year as well. So he doesn't necessarily tackle the guy. Look, JSN is an absolute volume monster. He's going to get the ball. How they decide, I would move him around a bunch early to figure out how are you going to defend him in the slot? How are you going to defend him outside? And here's the other thing he is going to open up a guy like Shaheed or a guy like Kupp to have it. We saw against the Rams, they go double bracket. Darnold sees it. Shaheed now on a massive long bomb. And I got it. And I think, and I'm going to drop a video on Match Quarters on Thursday about this. It's just like, how can they manufacture deep shots against Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, who are considered one of the better cornerback duos? And I'll just put this. When you put him in the slot, you don't allow Christian Gonzalez to travel. So it really kind of makes the Patriots defense vanilla. So I'm interested to use it, but to see how they use him. But I 100% agree with you. Use him in the slot.
Yeah. And even to see if Gonzo can hang with.
Which, by the way, he's had a ton. I don't watch the Chargers game because they don't have any outside receivers, but I do. Houston was not afraid of him, and neither was Denver. You just weren't able to hit enough against Houston, and they
floated the pick to him at the end of the game.
Yeah, so and then in Denver, it just was a weather issue.
Yeah. One thing that you want to do to keep JSN off the field, if not Sam Darnold, is to try and run the ball. But New England, they're good at running the football, which is kind of surprising because Travion Henderson isn't very bad. Like he can't be on the field during third down. So, but that's neither here nor there. What exactly do the Patriots need to do to try and like at least balance out? Like, you can't just be launching 40-yard deep bombs throughout the game. But
no. What do
you do other than that to try and hit something else if you don't want to be checked down Charlie all day?
Yeah, so their offense is good, but it's not the Seattle offense is good, but it's not elite in that. Mm-hmm. But New England needs, and I know that a lot of the media said they need to ugly the game up. They need to run the ball, get those extra linemen in, really affect that nickel. Look, everybody's been doing that too. The Seahawks. They have mechanics within their front to get the will linebacker down at an edge, to get Eamon Worry down. I mean, you're going to look out there a few times, and there's going to be a 6-1 box. They're going to have 6 guys on the line of scrimmage. You're going to have the will linebacker walked up, Eamon Worry locked up as basically edges. You're going to have everybody pinched inside. And you're going to have a Mike linebacker sitting there in the middle. And they can go cover 3. They can go quarters. They can do anything you want out of that. So I don't necessarily think that play action, too. The New England doesn't run that much play action. They want to drop back pass, and they want to play it. The signal, again, I go back to it, is the deep passing of Maye. And my problem for running is really on the Patriots defense. They are dead last in power success. And so if you don't know what that is, that's short line goal line. Anytime there's short yardage, anytime there's goal line, they are dead last in the NFL. And so if they can't get stops on like a 3rd and 2 or a 4th and 1, it's going to be a long day. And I think that, they have to score touchdowns. And that comes down to the red zone, right? The tell to me is, can the Patriots pass the ball deep? Which I think they will have opportunities to. They just got to move some guys around. They got to do some things, especially with Stephon Diggs. But can they score in the red zone? So the New England defense is not great. They're 31st in red zone ranking. Seattle is number one.
And that's been a real issue for them all year long. Because I mean, their defense has been pretty decent, but it just seems like whenever you get into the red zone, you're going to score a touchdown, not a field goal at that.
Yeah, you're bending and then you're breaking. So it's like if you don't get the turnover, because they were like number 6 in turnover worthy plays. Like if you don't get the turnover or you don't get the sack around midfield and they get in there, they're going to score a touchdown on you at least a third of the time. So if I'm New England and I'm a fan and I'm watching and I'm like, oh man, we're kicking field goals, and then Seattle scoring touchdowns, that's not a good mix.
Not at all. Now the Patriots, we've mentioned it throughout. If they're going to win, it's going to have to be something big over the top. It's going to have to be Drake Maye being Drake Maye, and it's going to have to be kind of like what we've seen over the last handful of years with quarterbacks winning Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes does a Patrick Mahomes-ish thing, and it happened at the right time in the third quarter as it's ticking down in the fourth quarter, even overtime if we get there, because Super Bowl or overtime Super Bowls are a thing that we learned in the last couple of years. But it will be interesting to see if the Patriots, outside of like trusting that, like, all right, Drake, you got it. What do they do? What does Mike Vrabel do to really play a really high intensity chess match against another version of him? I know the same name, but like a defensive minded head coach who's like, we got a young squad, but we're supposed to be here.
Yeah, and I think, look, we'll break it down. Here's the 3 things. Like if the Patriots are going to win, Drake Maye's going to have to play Superman. He needs to have 2 touchdowns that are passing, that are deep, right? When either they catch Seattle on a blitz. I think you can isolate Rick Woolen. I think you can isolate Josh Jobe. Those are the guys that you want to attack on the perimeter. I know look, they're going to pack the inside, right? You're not going to be able to do it. I think that there's ways and things that you can do, especially with like Stephon Diggs, to move him around, like we were talking about with JSN, move him around to get the isolation on some of these guys. And then if they can get one big play off of Mac Hollins, like we saw really against Denver, off of play action, I think he can be that playoff ringer of like, oh, you're blocking. Next thing you know, he's 30 yards down the field. I think the other thing that they can do is get they really can get Diggs. They need to move Diggs around all the time and find ways to get him the ball vertically. I think they do that. I think also too, Darnold will give the ball up. So if you can get turnovers and flip the field and you're scoring touchdowns and you're hitting the deep balls. So if you get 2 turnovers, if we look up and the Patriots got 2 turnovers and we look up and the Patriots got 2 touchdown passes from Drake Maye, I think they win. They need to be the Rams. They need to turn this into a shootout. If they turn it into a shootout, they've got a shot, because then I think they must be feeding that passing game.
Yeah. And it just sends more shadows towards Sam Darnold, because it's like it increases the pressure. Like we've seen this Phoenix rise. It's been awesome, but also it's like every level. He didn't have to do much in the divisional round. Well, he played the greatest game of his life in the NFC Championship game. Can he do it again in the Super Bowl from being Sam Darnold? And like, does that being Sam Darnold, does that come back to bite you in the ass all the way at the end? I don't know. But I think if the Seahawks win, it's going to be more of a like, yeah, Sam Darnold was the quarterback on that team. Everybody, Rick Woolen and Nick Warry, and it was everybody out in JSN, and Cooper Kupp got his second ring. And it was like, if they win, it's going to be more about like you said, the Death Star, the machine, as our friend Anthony Lawson calls it. The everything came together for all of this, and Sam Darnold was obviously a massive part of that. And his story individually is a great quarterback story, but at the same time, I think it'd be more about like, what can they turn this into the like Legion of Boom, but extend it more than they ever did?
Yeah, and I think with like you hit it. Like the defense shows up, and it's the Seahawks defense we've seen all year. The Rams were really the only ones. The Jaguars did a little bit, but the Rams were really the only ones that could throw deep. If you go look at all their deep passes, like half of them came against LA or 49ers early in the season, or the Jaguars, and really so I think like there is some signal from that. But it's gonna be really tight. It's gonna be really tight.
Is there we talk about this Super Bowl 2018 Super Bowl a lot, Rams Patriots, and we almost had a rematch. How crazy would it have been if we had a Rams Patriots?
Would have been insane.
But like how likely isn't the right word, but probable or whatever you want to call it, that we have like a version of that where it's like the Seahawks offense was really, really good until the Patriots in the Super Bowl and Klint Kubiak, because we saw him with the Saints for the first 2 weeks of the season. We're like, oh my God, is Derek Carr the MVP of the league?
Derek Carr.
And then it was like, oh yeah, Vic Fangio was like, hold on, guys, I got you. Let's put that in reverse. Does that happen here too? And I'm not saying that it's this big shift that we'd see in the NFL like we did in the previous one, but also, at least in this one moment, the Patriots did it last time. And if Mike Vrabel's the new Belichick,
yeah, I think that there's a way that they can. I do think, though, I go back to my talking points, like Drake Maye's going to have to scramble a little bit. He's going to have to hit the deep ball. If we're trying to just dink and dunk down the field, or we're just sputtering our run, they're
not going to win that game 13-3 like they did.
No.
But at the same time, there could be some similarities.
Yes. No, I think it could end up being a lower scoring game. I do think that. I think people are not giving the Patriots defense enough credit. They've really turned it on the back half of the year. So a lot of this stuff.
There's a reason C.J. Stroud threw 4 picks. Somebody had to catch him. There's a reason Justin Herbert looked as bad as he did because he had to play against that defense. The stunts have
really been hitting too. Like Mel Williams has really come on. Barrymore doesn't get a lot of credit, but like they also have too, like Chason. If you can get him isolated on a tackle, he's a pass rush specialist. So if it becomes one of those situations where it really does become a passing game, I think you don't want Darnold throwing 30 times. You want if he ends the night with 25 passes, you're probably going to end up winning. And I think too, it comes down to
20 of them with the JSN. Just keep going.
Yeah, all of them. And that's the thing. Like, so erase the deep ball. Force the Patriots to play the game that they don't want to play, abuse the slot. So JSN all over. He has 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Perfect. Okay. And then Leonard Williams wreck shop inside, and you get a couple of sacks. Look, Maye's going to take sacks. Everybody's going to talk like, hey, he can scramble his way out. He had 5 sacks against the Broncos too. So, I mean, it's not like
he took 5 against the Browns this year and beat them like 30-3.
Right. So he's going to take sacks. Yeah, and so I think, like, look, the questions are going to come down to, and we'll close up here. The questions are going to come down to, can Vrabel out efficient McDonald, who is another efficiency monster in himself? It's a battle of philosophy with Vrabel's culture versus McDonald's modern scheme, and just kind of perfecting it. And we don't get in trouble, but we're really efficient. I know exactly when to blitz. I know exactly what you're going to do. So to me, like, we'll both kind of give who we think is going to win. But I think if you're sitting here and you're like, well, coach, tell me what I need to know. Okay. If you believe the defense wins championships,
Gatorade's going to be purple. Bet that.
If you believe defense wins championships, bet Seattle. If you think that the best quarterback's going to win, I think you lean more towards Maye just because of the year that he's had. But look, it's a lot of unknowns, and I think that's why it's a really, really interesting game.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't believe in defenses. I just believe in New England's defense because they've played a month of really great football, regardless of how you feel about who they've played. Jarrett Stidham, Justin Herbert's not good in the playoffs. C.J. Stroud's not good in general. They've played really well, and I think our colors match up pretty well. You probably did it on purpose. Mine is more on accident, but I think I'm going with the Patriots. As much as that hurts me to say, as a Gen Zer who's only exclusively watched the Patriots dynasty, I love Drake Maye. Is just like he does it for me too. Like he's like the perfect quarterback where he's tall, throws the ball.
You're the perfect man. You're like my wife. You just love quarterbacks. Just love quarterbacks.
I'm telling you, I spent 13 years of my life protecting one. They're going to get my love forever and ever.
Unbelievable. I do think so. You got the Patriots. I think the Seahawks win, but I think it's close. Though,
yeah. I think it's close either way.
I'm the worst. I really don't want to make a pick. I just enjoy watching the game. Like this because you work with me on Field Vision. Like I hate the gambling side of things. Like I do not gamble at all. Like I am like averse to gambling. Like I am such a tightwad. And like to me, I'm like the worst because you would think like I'm ultra competitive and like I want to gamble on it or like, oh no, I think this is going to win. No. I want both teams to just have a lot of fun. Like let's just have a good game. Right? Like I'm literally my 6-year-old daughter.
Trophies, right? Oh man.
Yeah, she's like, I just want both teams to have fun. It's like, yeah, I just want it to be a really good game. Like I enjoy it, and I think when you and I know you because you are a degenerate, but like you like the gambling part. I do think Seattle wins, but you could totally talk me into like Seattle blows them out.
If we pod for another 30 minutes, it could be go.
Yeah,
we keep
going. Like I'll probably flip, and then the next thing you know, it'll be like I think Drake Maye is going to throw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, Rick Williams is going to get 4 picks.
Oh yeah, Rick Williams is going to make a mistake. Josh Jobe is actually not as good as he's played. So see, we're already headed down that road. We got to end this right now before I flip. So yes, I'm going to stand by it. I think Seattle wins. I think it's close. Could you talk me into a blowout? Yes. Could you talk me into this Patriots winning? Yes. But that's just because I love
it. It's all on the board. It's all on the board.
It's all there. I'm that crazy guy. I've got all the lines going everywhere. It's conspiracy theory. No, but hey, thanks for joining us again on this Super Bowl week, man. I've got tons of stuff on Match Quarters, so make sure you're checking that out. And then obviously, Let's Talk Ball. Tell your friends to get on this show. We're making history, Felix. We're making history.
I'll take it. Let's do it.